Welcome to Ask Dr. Change. I'm Dr. Linda Ackerman Anderson. I'm happy to have you join me today to explore how to seriously uplevel your leadership and consulting to transformational changes, all through conscious change leadership. Welcome to this last episode of the Change Leaders Roadmap Methodology series. We're now in phase 9 of the 9 phases of the CLR. Hallelujah! A lot of work has taken place. Phase 9 is about learning and course correcting. Now, obviously, throughout the entire process, we've been learning and course correcting. That's been built in, especially with a 4-quadrant orientation, learning and course correcting about what's required for each of the 4-quadrant work to be handled effectively. However, this time, this 9 phases is both a wrap-up, a continuation, and an improvement upon what we've put into place. There are 3 major activities. I'll name them here, and then I'll go into each one. The first activity is to build a system to continuously improve the new state. The next activity is learn from your change process and establish best practices for change. And the last activity is dismantle any temporary change infrastructure that you've put in place to support the project or the transformation. Let me go into each one of them. This is, again, deepening adoption, ensuring sustainment of the future state and its benefits to the organization, and also building change leadership capability and providing a clean ending, even though ... always we're proceeding with new changes that are required after this one is quote unquote complete. So this first activity, build a system to continuously improve the new state. Same name for the task. And what we're attempting to do here is where we've recognized the need to refine or tailor or alter what we're currently doing. Again, 4-quadrant approach. We actually have mechanisms in place that allow for continuous improvement. Otherwise, we have the orientation, it's over, it's done, we're complete, move on. And we want to, from a conscious change leadership perspective, emphasize that it's never really over. Change is an ongoing process. So as we're continuing to deliver on the new state, we're always learning and looking for opportunities to improve it. So continuous improvement, it happens here, and it could happen as an individual, as intact teams, as functions in the organization. And what we need to ensure is that there's a place for recommendations for continuous improvement to land. So it's not we made a mistake or we didn't get it right. It's all about how do we improve the way we're operating to support a stronger future for the organization. So it's both a generation of ideas for continuous improvement and a place for them to land and be addressed effectively and constructively. The next activity, learn from your change process and establish best practices. We are always building change leadership capability with our clients. And so it's never an ending thing. As the Change Leaders Roadmap has evolved over the past 40 years, we're always learning new things and embedding them into the methodology. Now, because the methodology is so comprehensive, this particular task is about discerning what your organization, your project has done particularly well or hasn't and would need to do it differently next time. Whether your human resources or your training and development or your change management or your project management or your change leadership people are the ones to look after this. They're the ones that typically know the process and know how it went. You're asking them to review the people and process dynamics, again, from a 4-quadrant perspective, what we did well that really worked for us and we want to embed in all future changes. What should we do differently that would improve our process, improve the way our people responded and were supported in the process, and could be as well in the design of any solution that would be needed in future projects. So we're looking constructively. It's a post-operation review, so to speak, an audit. And again, no blame, no shame. We're really looking to build change leadership capability throughout the organization because projects will continue, many of them. And so we want to get it as right as possible. Recall in phase one, we attempted to get learning to happen in all the relevant audiences in the organization about how best to use the Change Leaders Roadmap. And so this, again, is a lens that we can use looking at the people and process dynamics based upon the guidance in the roadmap, what we did well, what tools we used, what information we generated, all the way through all the activities and all the tasks of each of the 9 phases. And so we don't need to hammer this to death, but we definitely want to respect and reflect on how we did this project and how well we did with it. And again, it will improve and accelerate all future projects. So when we determine best practices for your organization, then they get embedded. They get monitored, they get housed, they get used, they get trained for all future projects. And so what that means is there's a place for them to be honored and recognized, identified, and offered. Sometimes we create a center of excellence of change that houses these best change practices. Sometimes we have a strategic change office or a transformation office that houses these best change practices and ensures their use and their development in all future projects. So that's a consideration that's outside of the running of the project, but supportive of the organization being successful at change. The third activity in this phase is dismantling the temporary change infrastructures you put in place to support the change effort, to have it happen effectively and many times to accelerate it. So I want to read these deliverables to you. They're very important. The temporary change governance, support structures, management systems, policies, roles, and technology that we put in place that are no longer needed or relevant have been dismantled and communicated as complete. So this is a cleanup, clean ending. So we put things in place, whether it was an accelerated selection process or policies around redlining salaries or whatever was needed to support the change to take place. Once they've fulfilled their purpose and are not needed in the ongoing organization going forward, they are consciously dismantled. Too often we find that these things linger. Why are we meeting? The project is kind of over already. And so it's a cleanup activity to demonstrate a good, solid ending. The next deliverable, the support structures, management systems, policies, roles, and technology employed in the change process and useful in the new organization are tailored, formalized, and communicated as continuing. So this is an interesting one. This is an agile move. So frequently we'll see that temporary structures and infrastructures have been put into place and they're really supporting the organization to function effectively. Why wouldn't we keep them in place? It was a reason to put in some quote unquote ad hoc actions and mechanisms. Why not keep them in place if they're really serving a purpose for the new organization? And so those are identified, tailored, formalized, and communicated as existing. They keep happening. A special meeting, a navigation team, a special selection process, an acceleration strategy. And so we allow for and support them to be as embedded pieces of the new organization because they're helpful. And the last deliverable of this activity is the target groups of your change effort understand that this current iteration of change is now complete. Target groups are your stakeholders, the end users, the folks that are living in the new reality because they're delivering it, they're succeeding at it. They now understand that what's coming at them from this project's perspective is now complete. However, we want to ensure that whatever course correction or continuous improvement ideas they have, they continue to come forward and have a place to land. It's important for them to understand this iteration is over. However, inevitably, there's a ... between phase 9 and then a new wake-up call in phase 1. Inevitably, more changes are happening, and perhaps those changes also affect the same target groups and stakeholders. So they need to understand what's coming next, why it's happening. We go right back into wake-up call and communicating, preparing to lead the change in phase 1. So inevitably, the completion of phase 9 leads us into new requirements for change in the organization. And again, having a process orientation, recognizing that even though a project has, quote unquote, been completed, there is more change happening and the organization will continue to evolve, hopefully in an agile way. So the 9 phases of the Change Leaders Roadmap, I've described them all in each of these episodes as sequential, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. However, the delivery of them, you might be in 2, 3, or 4 phases simultaneously in your project. Different levels of the organization might be in different phases. So what's really important is that someone understand the work of the 9 phases adequately to know how to orchestrate it, manage it, prioritize the work, accelerate it, monitor, and course correct. And that's essential in terms of understanding all of the work of the 9 phases. It's iterative and recursive, which means you might get to impact analysis and realize you've got some showstoppers and you go back to design. It might be you get to implementation planning and realize you don't begin to have the time required to do all the work needed. You go back and figure out how to handle that. And so iterative and recursive, it is sequential in that way. Now, I mentioned this early on, and I want to reiterate it here. We've gone through all 9 phases, all the activities, and mentioned each of the tasks. It's a lot of work. Do you need to do all of this? What's important to understand here is that we want you to understand enough of all of this work to know how little of it you need to do and still be successful. So you're picking and choosing the most important, the highest leverage tasks required for your project to be successful. Do you need to do all of it? Again, no. And so learning enough about what you need to do or not do and the implications of skipping those tasks, which is fine, is just consciously understanding the work you choose to do, the work you think is most important for the success of the project, and what you can leave out because is of less consequence to your success. That's really what's important here. It's also a mastery move, right? Learning enough about the Change Leaders Roadmap to know how best to tailor it to any magnitude of change, any type of change in the work that you're doing. So I'm hoping as you have pursued this series, all 9 phases and our introduction, maybe it's a good thing to go back to the first episode of this series and listen to the entire Change Leaders Roadmap again, now from the depth of your understanding. That would be a great way to further embed your learning, your perspective, and your mastery of this work. So I hope this series has added significantly to your repertoire for how you lead projects. I'm hoping that all of your projects reap the benefits of adding this kind of work to your process and your strategy. I hope you found some value in this. Thanks for spending this time with me. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope you gained some valuable insights for your work. Please send me your questions and challenges by going to askdrchange.com.